Well, hello everyone. Really good to be here introducing Ravi for this, and it's nice to see. And when I'm stopped talking, I'll look at some of the chats, see who's here, and see if I can recognise any names from over the years. God, I can't believe how long I've been here. By the way, first of all, I'm not a professor. Unless you want to tell my boss I can get a promotion, that would be fantastic. Anyway, so I've known Ravi for a very long time, and when I first came into teaching about 18 years ago now, and I came from industry, so I came into teaching as a kind of from not from the academic point of view, but from a sort of industry point of view, and I worked in various different sort of games and animation companies. But I came in because I loved teaching and I needed to move over to Yorkshire. Anyway, Ravi was one of the first few years. I almost can't remember it such a long time ago. It's a long time ago. So I've known him for quite a long time, and I've sort of kept an eye on his progress and asked him over the years for various favours, and he's been very, very kind and helped out with things like profiles and sort of been an excellent alumni really. He's one of the few. I was thinking of some anecdotes today, so I could say, and slightly embarrass him in this meeting. But basically, he's the only student that has ever done one of my modules twice, not because he failed it, because when he was in the first year, he came and asked me. He was really interested in the topic that I was teaching in the second year, and he actually wanted to come and do the. I think it was first, second year, or it could have been second, third year. I can't remember. But he did one of my modules twice, which was a real pleasure, and kind of in some ways preempted the fact that the hard work and dedication has obviously resulted in you doing extremely well, Ravi, and it was clear from the very beginning that was the case. I then went on to supervise him for his third year film, so I had weekly meetings with him throughout the year. To help him out and to try and guide him through the sort of storytelling and the animation essentially, which I hope you found useful. I mean, it's a very long time ago now, and anyways, I don't know when's the last time you looked at your actual film from the degree. You probably put it in a file somewhere and hopefully left it.
I was looking at it. I was looking at it last night. Actually.
Oh really? Oh wow. Were you going to get some clips for today?
Oh, I don't know. It's too embarrassing.
Well, as it happens, I could if you want to. I can find it.
Oh God. Oh, we'll see. We'll see how it goes.
No, I don't. Anyway,
yeah,
you've come a long way since then, obviously. But then after Ravi graduated, we had something in the university where students could work on some professional things for recent graduates and also students. And I directed a project with some other students with the eye doctor, and essentially various different students were involved. And Ravi was called in because a student had to leave, and very kindly offered to come and support that project. And then basically, again, just over the years, it's a real pleasure to see how well you've done, Ravi, and it's a real reward for a member of staff teaching in animation to see students go into industry and then to do very well. It's and I hate to use the word pride, but it's I really want the whole reason I'm in education anyway is to help people achieve their goals, and you clearly have superseded that. And again, hopefully you've met people along the way that have done the same thing, and supported you through that process. Anyway, I'll shut up. You're not here to hear me speaking. I'm going to be in the background. I'm looking forward to hearing what you've got to say, Ravi. So I will leave it there, and I'm looking forward to hearing what you've got to say. Anyway, take it away.
Oh my God!
I think we may have lost Ravi for a moment, folks. So we will wait for Ravi to rejoin the call. I think it might have been when he went to share his screen that he's disconnected, but I'm sure he'll be back with us shortly. So we'll wait to hear from Ravi very shortly.
We could show his graduation film while he's coming. I'm not sure he'd thank me for it.
Can you actually find it? Would you be able to access it, Jason?
Yeah, well, I've got a folder with all students' films that over the years I can very easily access it, but I'm not gonna. I wouldn't show it without consent anyway. But it's
What's it like when you meet alumni like Ravi these years later? Is
great.
it bizarre to, 15 years or so, I guess?
No, it's great. It's great. I mean, it's lovely to see people getting on and doing things. Anyway, he's back in.
We were saying some kind words about you, Ravi, but we will hand it back over to you.
I actually was hearing everything. So you were talking about showing my graduation photo, but I don't know, for some reason you guys were not seeing me. It's weird. But I mean, I don't know. Hopefully it works now. You guys can see my screen or not yet?
Not yet.
Okay, hold on. Apologies, everyone. Just, I don't know, last minute hiccups. Hopefully it works now. Yeah, you should be able to see it now.
Yeah, perfect. Thanks, Ravi.
Okay, awesome. So thank you, everyone, for coming, first of all, and thank you for the amazing introduction to the webinar. It was, very humbling from both Jason and Jack to hear the praises. And I come from a place where, I'm just passionate about what I do. And that passion is what brought everything else in my life, in a way, So as opposed to like really highly achieved academics that might be in your webinar series, I'm pretty, I'm just straightforward. My career journey is just, based on like the hard work and the passion I have for animation that I've been able to achieve everything. Can you guys confirm if you can see the screen? Because I'm getting some like weird messages.
Yes, we can see the screen.
Okay, perfect. Okay, perfect. So like I was saying, thank you very much to Bradford Uni for organizing this. Jack, it was amazing for you to reach out, and Jason to be back in touch with you. Always a pleasure. And for everybody to make it, it's great to see like familiar names and, just touch upon like people from Bradford Uni. So I'm just gonna briefly structure this presentation into like it's just gonna be going down memory lane, basically. So I'm just gonna go through my childhood years, university, how those kind of experiences formed me as a future animator in the animation and entertainment industry, and then how I went from becoming, from student to become a professional, how I made it into the big companies at Hollywood and LA, and then finally just, some reflections and opinions on what I'm doing now, some ambitions I have for future that I want to share with you. So just a brief background about myself, just so you get an idea. My family has roots coming from India, but I was born and raised in the Canary Islands in Spain. That's where I am right now. But, and this is like a very small island. Back in the day, you talk about like animation or media and all this stuff, and it was like an unknown thing. I would have to like by force travel abroad to do what I wanted to do. So, in a way, thanks to my career, I've had the honor to travel to many places across the globe, including, UK, India, China, US, etc. It's pretty common in the animation industry for people to move because of their work, because there's so many productions happening overseas, and the workforce might not be that much, so they have a lot of demand. So animators tend to bounce around a lot. These are some of the companies I work for. Some of them are really big studios. Some of them are more humble and smaller. Some of them don't exist anymore, like Candor Graphics, for example. But just to give you an idea. And let's kick it off with my childhood. So these pictures really summarize who I am even now, believe it or not. So I loved cartoons since I was a kid. You can see me dressed up as a Batman superhero over there. And I cannot explain it. I just loved it from birth. I just was addicted to cartoons. And I was addicted to playing with toys and just creating my own worlds and stuff. It was like a big thing for me. And funnily enough, that carries on today when I, plan, when I'm doing animation or when I'm crafting a story. I have to visualize, I have to plan things, I have to, mock up a scene and a maquette or play with a set. And it's almost like directing, right? So these kind of things, even though they're very trivial, I mean, it really formed me as who I am now. And then, these are my big influences, like comic books, video games, VFX movies. I remember when Jurassic Park came out, I was like, holy crap, like I just want to do this for a living. That movie and The Lion King, those two were the films that really set it up for me. And funnily enough, I was like very much influenced by Japanese animation when I was a kid, more than Western animation, because licenses were cheaper in Europe to get for TV shows coming from Japan was way cheaper. So you would get like this like run up of shows on Saturday morning cartoons that were all Japanese, and it was just like a huge formation for me. I'm saying all this, and it will have, I'll come back to it in the future when I talk about the projects I worked on and stuff. But basically, throughout my childhood, I was the type of kid, at school, I would be just drawing on my textbooks and, making caricatures of the teachers and stuff, selling comic books, like, for really cheap to my classmates. And one day when I was just finishing up school, I was like stuck in my head, like I really wanted to do this thing of animation, but I just didn't know how. And I would talk to my English teacher, Ellie, that was her name, and she, funnily enough, gave me like lots of brochures of different universities in the UK. And first of all, I was like, a university to study animation, really? Like that was new to me, because back in the day in Spain, at least, like you get like your usual private courses and stuff, but not like a homologated university degree, like a Bachelor of Science or Bachelors of Arts. So to me, that was a big deal. And then from the whole selection, I gravitated towards Bradford because it seemed, it seemed ideal for me, like very multicultural, very affordable at the time. To tell you the truth, I was scoring for my English course for the first certificate and IELTS, because as a foreigner, when you get to the UK, if you want to study to a university, I mean, the people who come from abroad in this audience will know, you have to do the language test. And my English tests were not that great, but it was good enough for Bradford Uni and for some other universities. But Bradford Uni had the animation course, which was great, and it had the Bradford Animation Festival. There's a picture of me. I don't know if you can see my cursor, but basically there's like a bunch of guys there, standing for a photo. That's me on the Bradford Animation Festival back in 2017. I don't know if it exists anymore. I heard it doesn't run anymore, right? In the National Museum. Is that correct, Jack or Jason?
No, it doesn't. It's not there anymore.
Oh, no, that's
It's
a
moved
shame.
It's moved to Manchester.
Oh, I see. Okay. So like Bath was like huge for me. You would just like get exposed to all these like films from everywhere, and then just a couple of anecdotes from my time at uni. Like I was telling Jason earlier, this is like a picture of, if you see in the bottom right corner, there's the you can see the Horton Labs, and that was a picture taken like at 2 a.m. or something. And I was working on precisely Jason Ticker's assignment at that time, which was, I think it was Introduction to Maya, I believe. I don't remember. Jason, you can correct me. And I was just like, Bradford for me was great because it was the first time that I got exposed to multiculturalism. I had to learn English. I really struggled. My very first class with, I think it was Ian Palmer, the dean at that time. I couldn't get the British accent at all. I was like, it just flew over my head. And and I would just be in touch with my family, and my parents were like, how are you going to do this? It was my first time alone from home, abroad and away from family. And so there were a lot of things going on, but I was just like, I don't know, I was so into just learning animation and just want to do this thing. I think that positivity of that just spread over, and then people supported me along the way. And Jason, you were fantastic as a tutor for me. I remember the biggest tip you gave me was like, why are you like putting yourself down, right? Because I remember doing the final year project presentation, And I was kind of like, yeah, it's cool. I'm not sure if it's great, but hope you guys like it. And you were kind of like just pushing me to like, no, just just be confident, right? And even till today, I struggle with that, to be honest. But I always remember that. I always remember those talks with you in your office. And so, yeah, there's a lot of great things that happened to me at Bradford, the installations, the library. I would spend like hours on that library with resources. I got some awards from uni. I have one of them here, which is the one I have in the picture. I don't know if you guys can see in my webcam. Is the what's it called? The EIMC Founders Prize, 2007, July. So that was pretty cool. It's a great vibe. A lot of good friends I met. And Bradford Uni, what was amazing also is that while I was studying, somehow, people noticed, and I got connections through, uni to get like jobs, especially like there was at that time in the Horton building downstairs. I don't know if it's there anymore, but there was like a bunch of offices set up for like startup companies or people who were just recently graduating and wanted to set up a little company or venture or something. And then the university were helping. And I remember being there working freelance on the company Revolution Software, which is famous for the video games, the graphic adventures, Broken Sword. Charles Cecil was the CEO of the company, the founder. And so we were working with him. And I think it was like at the time I was still like graduating. I was still doing my final year project. I was still doing the assignments. So it was like I was blown away. Like I'm so, lucky to have this. But it was kind of like just me also trying to put the effort to show. And that's something that I wanted to share as a tip, if I may, because I think a lot of you guys are already professionals. But there is this thing with, especially in the artistic field, we are very shy to share our work. We always think we are not good enough. I suffer that a lot. But sometimes, like just going for it and really being outspoken and connecting with people, it's just like you never know what doors may open. And that's kind of what happened here. Like I was like just, trying to do everything I could. I was going to like extra drawing classes in the evening. I was like trying to learn all the subjects. Like Jason was saying, I was going to, his module twice. I think all that paid off somehow, and till today is the same. Honest, I mean, I operate the same way. I think the same way, and things happen. So at that time, what happened was that freelance job happened. The final year project graduation happened, and then several connections started to come up with companies. The first job I got in a corporate studio was in Manchester called Red Vision. And that was the producer, I think, got my reel from Bradford Uni. So the university forwarded my reel, and that was fantastic. That really opened my doors. And so basically, I got to work on, various like short form content, like TV series and short films. When I finished at Manchester, I then got to work in Sheffield at Red Star Studio, Red Star 3D, which now is like growing really big. Now it's like a really recognized studio, and they're jumping into feature films. At that time, we were like 5 or 6, and we were just doing like these 4D stereoscopic films, like for theme park rides and stuff like that. And it was really cool. It was just like a very niche market. But all those kind of small studio experiences really, really teach you about, just communicating with people, like being efficient, wearing many hats, which you don't get to do in a bigger corporation. You get to ask to be more specialized and stuff. So that was great. And then after some time in the UK, I was really bit by the bug of Hollywood and the big movies and, Pixar and DreamWorks and Disney, and I was like, how do these guys do it? I mean, how can I make it there? I was this obsessed, and I enrolled in iAnimate, which is an online animation course, character animation, and I graduated from there while I was working at Red Star in Sheffield. And then with my reel, I decided to go back home for a bit, look for a job in feature studios in Spain, and I got to work on this movie right here, Justin and the Knights of Valor, which, you know, the company unfortunately shut down. The movie was not that successful, to be honest, but it was a great experience because a lot of the animators and colleagues I met now are like really highly achieved people, like very successful in the industry. And it just speaks for the talent. They were very talented. Sometimes it happens in this industry, like you get really talented people, but you know, just the projects are not that, you know, well managed, or you know, the leadership is not that great, unfortunately, or you know, the creative aspect of the project might not be inspiring for you, but the people are super talented and they try to, you know, make it work within the parameters they have. They try to make it work. So that's something I learned a lot as well. Like it's not about, because I always have that kind of itch of, oh, I wish I worked in a big hit. You know, I worked in Hollywood, I worked in LA, I worked in big movies, but they were not like the Oscar winning, you know, like something that people will remember. And that's something that, you know, I tell students, especially because students nowadays, they get so much of leeway with options. And there's so many animators now. Learning resources are way more than back then. But, you know, they get to be choosy. And I'm like, dude, like, you know, I was like, it took me 10 years to get to like where I am now, or even more time. And there's some kids now who just graduate and work in the big studios, and you know, it's so easy. But you need to appreciate those small things. I think it's very valuable. So anyway, you know, from Spain, I got the contact from one of my ex mentors and heads of animation at the time in India. They were setting the DreamWorks Animation, the branch over there, for 5 years, and then they were finally doing an entire film there, because you know, at the time it was like a support studio. So they asked me to come over, and you know, like, because I have this connection with India, with my cultural background, and I took it as a chance to explore my own roots a bit. You know, I connect with my family, and that experience really set me. You know, it's probably one of the highlights in my career, because I got to, all of a sudden I realized I didn't know what I was doing in animation till then. You know, when you're with the elite and you see them, like, they're so good. You know, you get to see the people working, you know, with the guys in the States and in India, and like the you know, there were a pool of really talented French people as well with us. There was like this really big family of talented people, and you just get to, you automatically get influenced by being surrounded with so many good people. And I got the chance to, you know, we were a small team in India, but we kind of had to prove that we could drive the entire film by ourselves. In the end, we got support from the States, but we had to stay on top of supervising. So that's where I got the experience of, okay, how to be from an animator just doing your work, to actually lead teams, to supervise, to develop a character. And this is where I got my first Annie Award nomination. The Annie Awards, for those who don't know, in the world of animation, is kind of like you could say the Oscars, but for animators, kind of. I mean, the easiest way to put it. But it's like this very highly regarded international award ceremony, and for me, it's a big deal. Like, wow, I think I was like 27 or 26 at that time, or no, even less, 25 maybe. Can't remember. It was like back in 2014. So I got to work on this character, Dave the Octopus. Basically, this character was assigned to me to develop it and supervise it throughout the film. It was the villain. And at the time, it was the most complex character that DreamWorks Animation had ever done in 3D, because it was this talking and walking octopus that had emotions and feelings. It was like, all of a sudden, from being a student to just, you know, trying to compete with the elite, it was huge boost in my career. And you know, I really treasure it because the team was fantastic. You know, and speaking of teams, you know, I got also offered, once that movie finished, I got offered to go to China, in Shanghai, to set up the Oriental DreamWorks branch in China. And that was quite an experience. So thankfully, you know, I was able to, because of my exposure to leading teams and supervising, I was right away able to go in as a leadership, as part of the leadership in the animation team, and help build the studio. And it was a sad experience, to be honest, because the studio, it's not that I mean, it kind of shut down, but it evolved into something else, and it's not what it was meant to be. And the projects we were working on just got cut off due to the acquisition of of DreamWorks Animation by Universal Studios back in 2016 or 17, I can't remember. And but the experience I had was, first of all, China, like just being in a totally foreign country. I didn't know the language, I didn't know the culture, and all of a sudden you're thrown into this challenge with 31 animators, locals mostly. There were, I think, 4 of us or 5 of us foreigners. That's it. Rest were all local Chinese people. And it was a wonderful experience. Again, one of the things I loved as a kid, remember I was telling you about how obsessed I was about drawing cartoons and things like that, and drawing caricatures. So drawing has been something that I've pushed for a lot, just on my own, but also as part of my job. And as an animator in the computer, a lot of people don't really regard it as that important. And there are great artists and animators who don't draw necessarily, but drawing just gives you this graphic aspect of things, how you can design and compose, and how you can come up with ideas creatively from your head, visualize without needing to do a lot of extra work, just with a couple of scribbles, right? And I think what was surprising to me is how useful it was to communicate to the Chinese people, because there was no language barrier anymore. I remember, like, trying to explain, in animation, we talk about spacing a lot. Spacing means, if you have a position here and here, what happens in between, how the acceleration and deceleration happens. So that change of speed is very important. And to explain that in Mandarin, I would say, the spacing needs to be broader. So your timing, the time it takes to get to one point to another, it's the same, but it's just with a broader gap in between. How do you explain that in Mandarin? They would translate it as, oh, just make it slow, just make it fast. I was like, no. I learned enough basics of Mandarin to catch that. And I was like, okay, this is not going to work, because I can't talk in Mandarin fluently. So I just had to sit down and draw everything. And that's where I have this passion for drawing even more so, because it's just a communication tool. So I was telling you guys, like, the branch in Oriental DreamWorks in China shut down. Eventually, we worked on some great stuff, but never took off. And then, there was this hiatus time. People were getting laid off, and the studio was shifting into a different plan. And so I decided to take off and come back home in Spain, and where I am now. At the time, I was living with my parents for some time. And then I decided to freelance for some time. And I got this great experience with one of the greatest animators in history. I did have a picture with him, like, on Skype, because it was all remote, but I don't have it with me, unfortunately, to share. But it was basically, if you see this drawing it's a TV show called Trash Truck. And this TV show was created by Max Keane, who's the son of the great Glenn Keane, one of the best animators in the world. And I got a chance to work with both of them remotely on this freelance gig that happened through a friend of a friend that were DreamWorks, and they needed some animators because they were pitching this idea at that time to Netflix. No, sorry, not Netflix. It was Disney Plus. Not even Disney Plus. Disney Plus didn't exist. It was Disney Toons. It's crazy. It's like so long ago. And they were trying to pitch this, but Disney didn't take it. So then they went to Netflix, and to pitch the idea, which was quite revolutionary for me. Like, usually a pitch is like a presentation, like what I'm doing right now. You have some slides and you're just going to talk through. But they wanted to take it a step further and animate a little teaser for it, a pilot. And that's where I got a chance to work with Glenn, and it was an incredible experience. Hold on, I have this drawing from him. This is an original. Hold on. Right here. I don't know if you can see it. It's signed by him somewhere. I don't know if it's clear. But yeah. So it was incredible, like to work with this legend, and you just expose all of a sudden to different ways people think. That's something also very important. A lot of times we get stuck into one company and we just get used to one way of working. I think it's essential to understand the broader scope, to just take a step back and analyze, okay, this company works this way because of such reasons or such history, and just be, efficient and try to adapt. It's key. I'm gonna play one of the. Let me see if I can find it. Oh, never mind. Never mind. I'll play later. I wanted to show you one of the freelance jobs I did for one of the studios I worked with recently, Agora Studio. And Agora has been fantastic because since back then, they were already adopting the whole working remotely kind of idea, which at that time was like, very far. But then it boosted up with COVID, and nowadays it's commonplace to work remotely from home. But at that, I was knowing them when they were like 4 guys, and I was just like helping them on projects because again, we had acquaintance from DreamWorks. We knew a lot of common people. So that's how you network as well in a way. I mean, a lot of people ask me, how do you network in this field? And I'm like, I'm not the right person because a lot of it is driven by my work or my experiences with different studios. It's not like I just go out there, but I mean, I did back in the day when I was in Bradford. I did go to Bath. I remember going to the Leeds festival. I think it was one of the events at Leeds, and I was like trying to be there just to sell tickets. That's the only job I've done outside animation, just sell tickets on a festival, and I was really piss poor at it, so I never do it again. But I got to meet people. I was very obsessed, and that obsession in a healthy way, it's I think it's a good thing. I mean, I don't know, but I think it's if you embrace it as part of your life, that's what I say to people. Obviously, you gotta be healthy, you gotta disconnect. You can't just be stuck on this all the time. But I just love it. I just love animation as a whole. Yeah, so let's carry on. How did I make my jump to Hollywood and LA and the big studio? So when I went back to Spain, I had a brief gig in London. Actually, I just went to the UK for a couple of months. A lot of people will say, "Oh, you worked in London." I was like, "No, I worked in the UK, but not London." But then I was like, "Oh, I'm fed up of this. Let's work in London." So I just went for a small project. And this one, it was one of those that I actually just wanted to try out visual effects, because I had at the time I was working mostly in like the cartoons, like cartoony animation, very family oriented films and very much stylized kind of animation work. I wanted to try and challenge myself and be like, okay, how is it going to be if I do something more photorealistic? And there's plenty of really big famous brilliant studios in London with great artists who do this type of films. What I mean by VFX is like these films that mix with live action and actors and real actors, and then you have these like characters that are animated but they're integrated in the real world. So this is a challenge. I mean, you have to understand like a lot of detail, a lot of high end way of working. And I just decided to go for it. And I had this opportunity to work on Detective Pikachu Pokemon film. Pokemon is a known franchise, as you all know. But the cool thing about this, and this was the first time I was exposed to like pre-production, because I had done pre-production as an animator and developed characters and all that. But then this time I was like part of this brain trust, developing ideas for the film. Some of them will make it, some of them won't. And I was working with the pre-visualization team, which is essentially the people who are building the prototype of the film. They're building the layout of the movie before the movie gets made. And being on that phase and directly speaking to the director and pitching ideas visually, just animating them and showing it, that's what I love the most. I love to just be on that exploratory phase. And that's why I love character development as well, which I've done a bunch. at DreamWorks. So my connection to DreamWorks came about because of what I had done in India and China, and the project I was working on in China at the time got shifted to LA. So they kind of needed a little bit of history from what I did before. It was kind of like serving them in a useful way to be that kind of bridge between what was developed in China. The movie was taking place in China as well. So there was this kind of factor that, okay, maybe, you know, it would be great if Ravi joins us in the US and he has that experience with these characters already. Because that's something really important in animation. When you spend time on a project and with the characters, you know, you automatically will get preference in terms of, you know, okay, I would rather put this person in this movie because he has been for so long on you know, touching up those characters and getting to know them and feel them. And in animation, it's all about acting and getting to really be on the character's soul in a way. I mean, I'm talking very abstract, but we do this a lot. We're like actors. We just, you know, we puppeteer our digital puppets, you know, and we do a lot of recording of ourselves. And that's kind of what I'm going to show you next. You know, when I was at DreamWorks in LA, I learned this importance of acting. When I saw the team, I was like, okay, you're a great animator. You made it. You know, you're on the big studio. You have the skill. But what you do with that skill is like, wow, like when you're in a big studio, then you see the difference. And I would see that, you know, we have animation dailies, like daily meetings where people submit their work for review and they sit with the director and they get reviews. And I would just go to the daily sessions of other people. I was not signing up anything. I just wanted to see and I wanted to get to know. And it was in How to Train Your Dragon 3. That was my first movie in LA at DreamWorks. This was such a awesome experience, man. I mean, I will never forget. Like, animators were just like really good at acting. They really studied cinema and film and good actors, and they studied the live action footage of the voice actor of the character. They tried to imitate gestures, come up on their own ideas, pitch it to the directors. And I'm always even today, I'm not like a great actor per se, but I understood that the acting of animation is more like it's more like outside in instead of inside out. If I can explain this, it's more like, you know, actors kind of really build the emotions and get into it, and then they let it go and they act. And for animators, it's like we have to be aware how we look like on screen and how we are smiling and making faces, and we have to really be aware of how we move. And it's weird. It's like this. It's almost like the reverse. We have to analyze the physicality and the motion of things, not so much like, I mean, I'm not gonna go all Michael Caine, you know, either. But you don't need to, you know, you just need to be good enough to understand your character and then bring that magic in the puppet in 3D. And then, you know, I got to work in many movies this way. I got to work on Dragons. I got to work on Abominable, which was the project that I was doing in China at the time. It was called Everest. And then I got to work on The Bad Guys. The Bad Guys was actually my last project at DreamWorks. And The Bad Guys was very special to me because it was heavily inspired by Japanese animation, which is what I was telling you guys. Like, I was so inspired with comic books and Japanese cartoons and things like that. It just all came to use, you know. So there was that. And then another big highlight in my career was this movie, Boss Baby 2. Boss Baby Family Business, I think is the official name. And I got to, again, supervise the villain of the film, Dr. Erwin Armstrong. And Dr. Armstrong was a tough character because it was like two characters in one. Basically, it's a baby in the body of an adult that is like a robot. So you had almost like three characters. You had the baby, you had the adult, you know, when he's inside the suit, he behaves like an adult. And then you have the robot suit. And, you know, it was like really challenging. You know, I just had to make use of all those experiences I had in the past, mix it up, come up with new ideas. And I, you know, resorted to old school cartoon animation again. So it's like going back in circle. And this is the great thing about this job. You get to force yourself to adapt to different things and learn new stuff every time. Every time, even if it's like even if I have to animate a character jumping, no two jumps are going to be the same. It's just like real life. You just, the character is going to be different. His weight is going to be different. His gender is going to be different. His clothing is going to be different. So you have to, like, you know, really push yourself and learn all these things. And then we come to my time nowadays. I think, you know, after a while doing animation, one of the things I was tapping into when you get exposed to these opportunities to supervise, work with other departments and things like that, it's how films get made under the hood, you know, how things come to you before they get into production. And that started to really interest me. And I started to be like, okay, you know, when I get a shot and I have to animate it, I'm like, but the camera feels wrong, right? And all of a sudden you're commenting on something that's out of your scope, out of your supposed task. But I really wanted that autonomy. I wanted to change the camera. I wanted to, like, you know, be more contributing. And I think it got me to the point that I just started to get obsessed with story. And by story, I mean in the industry, you talk about storyboarding. I was mentioning it earlier. And storyboarding, for me, is like a very complex art form, and many people do it very differently. But to me, it's like, if I have the power to visualize something as good as I can on my own, pitch it to you, and, you know, you just have to execute it. You just have to animate it. That's like the essential bulk of work is done. So I started to get obsessed with this idea, and, you know, been kind of like, I haven't animated in a long time. I've mostly been focusing on storyboarding, layout, previs, and I've worked for different companies. When I left DreamWorks, I came to a show at Warner Brothers. The show got canceled, unfortunately, but it was a great prospect to learn about storyboarding in a in a sort of a, it was an animated show, but it had a very adult live action take on it. And, you know, you all of a sudden are talking about narrative things that usually you don't get on these cartoony family movies, you know. So the filmmaking is more sophisticated. You have to learn about writing a bit, and so it has been a wonderful journey. And you know, I've been doing more of it recently. I've been able to help at Agora Studio. They put me in this umbrella term as a creative director, because, to be honest, it's like I just doing so many things for them that are different, from animating to designing characters to storyboarding. They don't know what to call me, what title to give me, so they just gave me this umbrella title, which is great. But, you know, essentially, I'm just like helping develop internal IPs for the studio. I'm pitching them ideas every week. You know, I'm shifting from one project to another. It's a really creative work, you know, and that's something I wanted to really emphasize and end with. I really believe that you can now create your own work, your own job in a way. It's a very abstract term. I don't know how to explain it, but basically, with all these things about AI coming, and a lot of students and a lot of newcomers are freaking out. Oh, is AI going to take my job? And, oh, the industry is in crisis. And it is. It is tough. It is difficult. I'm not going to deny it. But I think if you get out of your comfort zone, it's always the case. If you get out of the comfort zone and learn other stuff, which, you know, when you work in a big company, you tend to specialize more. When you tend to work for smaller studios or you do something more independently, you have to really, you know, understand it in a holistic way. And when I see good filmmakers from, you know, past time, you know, my favorite filmmakers, they're all like, you know, super holistic in their filmmaking. They're not just like director for hire. So that's kind of my inspiration always. And I think, you know, when I say this, is like, I've been trying to pitch and work on this idea of storyboarding in a new way. And a friend of mine, my mentor originally from Warner Brothers, he was my episodic director, Maciek Liwa, and a very good friend. With him, we're developing this system in a software called Blender, which is the logo right here. You can see on the orange and blue circle. Blender is an open source software. It's really powerful. It changed my life completely, and I think it's worth mentioning it because we're building this system to integrate drawings in 3D space and storyboard in 3D and all these kind of things, which may sound a bit complicated for everyone, but it's essentially doing drawings and having a 3D environment with it. And what you can do with it, all of a sudden, you have cameras that you can work with in a 3D set, like as if a director does, with the lenses and the focus and all that stuff. But also you have the graphism, the graphic aspect, and the aesthetics, and the silhouettes, and the art direction of a drawing. And I think that has been very successful for us. I've been doing some storyboarding with the system. I'm going to show you guys and end this talk. I think I went over time quite a bit, but hopefully you guys enjoyed it. And I'm just gonna play one last video. Just this one here, and we can end it. So that's it, you guys. It's all I got.
Thank you so much, Ravi. You can see the applause coming in there. That was brilliant. Thank you so much.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I cannot gauge the emotional response. It
was brilliant. It was so good. Jason's saying he has to go, but
yeah, thank you, Jason.
Earlier,
yeah, sorry, Ravi, I've really got to go. I'm sorry, I'm already late, but it was really, really fascinating talk. Thank you very much for that.
Thank you, Jason. Thank you so much.
See you later. Bye.
Yeah, see you. Bye.
I think respect to Jason as well, because what you said about the conversation earlier that you had in his office, I thought was really inspiring. A few people saying they've got to go, which absolutely, and great that this has been an opportunity to reunite you with some of your old friends like Simon, Ravi. But thank you so much. I loved seeing you act out that animation. That was brilliant. And we've really enjoyed it. I think that's what I'm seeing in the chat. Read those comments because people have really enjoyed it. Do you have time to stick around for a couple of questions?
Yeah, for sure. I'm sorry I went overboard. Like I think I went.
No, it was an excellent presentation. So I think I speak on behalf of the audience when very hesitant to hold it back because there was so much interesting things in there. So everyone, I know we are on the hour, so if you need to head off, no problem, and thank you so much for coming. I would ask if you can fill out that feedback. That's really helpful for us. It's pinned in the chat there. But yeah, if anyone wants to stick around and ask a question, if Ravi, if you don't mind staying over back for about 10 minutes, just to
absolutely, yeah,
brilliant. So Andrew's got a question, which is it came up a few times in your presentation about the fact that the industry can be quite it changes and studios open, close. So Andrew's asked, how many shows start and then get cancelled?
Oh, that's a tough question. Many. I mean, there's no like exact science, but and especially lately, it's happening a lot due to the whole, streaming bubble. So what happened was during COVID, I mean, the whole thing about, staying at home and getting entertainment from home became really big. And there was a lot of demand. So everybody thought, all the big companies thought this is the future, like streaming. Oh, but to get it to streaming, there was this race to get their catalog to the most. Like Netflix was the champion, right? Oh, we have like this huge variety and overly saturated library of stuff, and they just want to put more and more and more. And what happens is that all of a sudden, your schedules start to get tighter because they want it fast, because they want to be the other platform. So things start to cheapen in cost, and therefore it has an impact on the work. Like for big studios, all of a sudden the big studios are having a hard time, I believe, in this regard, because they are like this big machinery and they operate a very specific way. But all of a sudden, for half the budget, you have smaller studios popping up that are doing equal or sometimes even more successful stuff. So it's very fluctuating. I cannot give you an exact number, but it is happening for sure. It is a reality we have to face. Having said that, the positive side is that there's more jobs because there's more demand. So it is true that, yeah, there are a lot of things getting canceled, but at the same time, there's a lot of other stuff that is getting made, and it's a lot of variety I see that you wouldn't see years ago. This whole like Spider-Verse movie that came, or Arcane, which is a very famous TV show based on a video game, League of Legends. This is brilliant stuff in animation that we would not see years ago. Before it was like, Pixar and Disney and DreamWorks, the big guys. But now it's like these players are coming that are new and fresh and young, and I think it's good. It's a good thing. But yeah, I think that's all. Yeah.
Thanks so much, Ravi. I think that leads quite nicely into the next question in a way, because what came through for me in your presentation is that although there are those challenges, your passion has really led you. And Nigel has asked a question, and I saw Nigel is a colleague of ours at the University of Bradford who said earlier in the chat that Nigel shares your story when speaking to students about the university. So Nigel asked a question which is very relevant on that topic, which is, what one piece of advice would you give to up-and-coming young people wanting to pursue a career in the creative industries?
Good question again. So, I mean, the number one thing is that you really gotta like it, because I'm being honest, right? It can get difficult. I mean, forget the big picture of all the industries in crisis or all that. Forget that, but just the way creativity is, and when you work with other people, all of a sudden you have different voices to deal with. You have to collaborate. You have to be, very adaptive. You have to be willing to learn and change your work. I remember I was heartbroken the first time I got like a very harsh feedback on my work. I was in Red Star in Sheffield, and it was my lead animator, James Rogers, who later became, I think he's the founder of Luna Studios. I think he's in Sheffield as well. But anyway, he just saw my stuff and said, "This is absolute garbage." I was like a junior at that time. I was like 2 years maybe into like working professionally, and I just broke down when I went home. I couldn't, I was like really processing what happened. At the end of the day, it's not you, it's the work. So don't, try to build that thick skin and try to. I know it's hard because I went through that. So, and I still go through that. Every good artist I know always is scared to show their work when they have to go for a review or stuff like that, even till today, even when you're experienced, because it just changes all the time. So I think the key is you got to love it. You got to love those up and downs. You got to love to grow and see the longer, the bigger picture and the longer road ahead. And just, yeah, back in the day I was like really like focusing on hard work, and and I still do, but I think you gotta also balance it with life. You gotta embrace it. That's what I say. You gotta make it part of your life. You gotta really enjoy talking about it, or not at the expense of your health, obviously. But I think that's the main advice I would give for any student. It's especially relevant now. You gotta love it. You just gotta love it. You gotta be ready for it.
Thank you so much. In light of that, given that it can, if you're so passionate about something and it means so much to you, it can make it harder to get that feedback, and it's something you care about a lot. I think we all really appreciate you sharing that advice and being honest about your experiences. There's a comment which is a nice way to follow on from that, which is from Ash, who said, "Hi Ravi, my 8-year-old is into drawing animation, Goku and Lego. How can we encourage little kids to consider animation from that age? Is there a group or class they can join to start from a young age, please? Thank you."
Interesting. Okay, that's a very good question. I would have to look into it. I think there is plenty, I think, nowadays. One thing for sure, if I think one of the resources that are really cool for kids, especially nowadays, is the program I was talking about earlier, Blender. So Blender is open source. You can just download it on your computer. There's a lot of tutorials and things like that. I know friends of mine who are parents, and they've been teaching their kids. They sit down with them. Obviously, the parents are my ex-colleagues, so they know a little bit of animation and stuff. So they would be like, okay, let's create a robot character today. And they would, together with the kid, it's like a Lego piece, they make it out of cubes and primitive shapes. And all of a sudden the kid is really engaged. It's like playing with Legos. It's like playing with toys, like what I was doing when I was a kid. It's the same thing, but you're doing it in a virtual environment. And I think that nowadays is so reachable, that goal of learning when you're a kid. There was a 14-year-old who animated on Spider-Verse. He did the sequence on the last Spider-Verse movie, and he animated a sequence in stop motion with little Lego, not Lego, but Playmobil kind of version of Spider-Man. He was 14 years old and he could do it. He learned by himself. There's a lot of resources on YouTube. There's a lot of young kids who are sharing their knowledge and experiences. Ash, I guess how old was your kid? 8-year-old. 8-year-old. Okay, he's very young. I mean, at the same time, don't be too obsessed. He's a kid. let him have his childhood. But I think drawing also is another way to get into it. To me, drawing is essential. I know, like I said before, a lot of people don't really draw, and that's fine. But I think, especially with all this about AI and the technology growing and everything, I think the artistic side will never go. And that's what's going to give you an edge. All of a sudden, your 8-year-old might become an art director, and his drawing capability is going to help him supervise teams. That's what happened to me. So I think drawing is a great way to get into it. Encourage your kids to draw, and just have fun with crayons and things like that. Animation is like a bigger beast. It can come later, with Blender and all that, maybe when it's 12, 13, yeah, that's but there is courses out there. I'll just have to look into it, but yeah, for sure there's plenty.
Thanks very much, Ravi. We've had a couple of requests actually for the recording for this. It's something I think we probably need to speak to you about afterwards in terms of sharing and what we can share and what we can't. But David, for instance, mentioned that his grandson would be really interested to see this, who's into the graphics course at GCSE. So I'm sure there's something we can share today, whether we can on our side maybe edit something, but I'll speak to you about that afterward, Ravi, and update our alumni about that. Appreciate a lot of the things we might not be able to share.
Yeah, no worries.
And then David's asked another question, which is, and maybe we'll end on this one, to really appreciating your time this evening. Are you limited by today's available technology?
If I'm limited, I would say not by the technology. I'm limited by my own level of skill and artistry and creativity. That's my limitation. I think that technology sometimes can limit you when you're certain studios work a certain way. They have a certain tool set and a certain philosophy of why they build things a certain way, and that could be limiting. that has been, as a supervisor in in many projects, for me, one of the challenges is working with other departments, for example. So you have to, sometimes you have to understand that technology and really understand the shortcomings, and really ask them, like, can't you just make this better? Like, can't you just gotta negotiate and push people, because obviously every film has a certain budget, and special effects might have one budget, the animation team might have another, the people who set up your characters and create them might have another. But if one thing, because of the tech they use, is affecting your job, you gotta, as a supervisor, you have that, that the sort of duty to talk to, for the betterment of your team, to negotiate these things with others. And I think the technology is so amazing now. That's part of the reason why I'm doing what I'm doing with my friend, and doing this like hybrid storyboarding in 2D and 3D, because the technology allows so much more now. There's like VR, there's I think imagination is the limit now. I really believe that. I really think you can be at home and be doing fantastic stuff. Yeah, I think so. It's just our own learning. It's ongoing, and that's the hard part, to be really good and be always up to par. Being able to visualize what you have in your head. That's the challenge to me, more than the technology. Yeah.
Thank you so much. And thinking about what your career takes you into next, you've got your is that a Twitter or X handle on the screen there?
Yes, this is both. I believe it's Twitter and Instagram. So that's my handle there. That's my website. You can also Google my name. I think nowadays, I mean, not to brag, but it's just like, it just comes up like with a bunch of like, links and stuff. But yeah, that's essentially, if you wanna like get directly in touch, that's my social media handle right there.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much, Ravi.
Thank you.
Really enjoyed your webinar, and you can see from the chat, I'd really recommend having a look through it, and we can send you the chat afterwards, because there's so many brilliant comments in there, and people really, you can see from Nigel there, but we've seen throughout people say connecting with it, asking questions. It's clearly inspired a lot of people. And I hope awesome. You will let us know the next time you're in the UK, and maybe you can come and visit Bradford again, because I think a lot of the things you said today, there's so many learnings for students, and it would be great to link up. I think I speak for all of my colleagues and our alumni when I say that.
Thank you. Thank you.
But firstly, thank you for today.
Yeah. Thank you, Jack. Thank you for reaching out for this, and I really enjoyed it. And I mean, I miss Bradford. Yeah, I do. I mean, I would love to just hop back sometime. I mean, we'll see. We'll see how it goes. Right now, I'm kind of on waiting for my first child to be born. So I'm kind of
congratulations.
in a bit of a pause from work. So that's why, I'm not able to talk about current plans or anything. But yeah, so I'm going to be a dad soon. We'll see if I can travel anytime in the future. But thank you very much. I really appreciate it.
Amazing. Well, congratulations. That's great news. And it's the next slide in your story there, I think.
Yes.
Next time we'll have another slide, and it will be your journey into fatherhood. We'll finish the webinar there. Thank you so much to Ravi, and thank you to everyone for attending today, for engaging, and for all your great questions and interaction in the chat. It's been a really excellent Meet the Alumni webinar. So I hope you have good evenings, or whatever time of the day it is where you are. I hope the rest of your day goes well, and thanks for attending, and we'll see you soon.
Thank you, everyone. Cheers.